Welcome back, everyone, to another Complete Aviation Solutions Deep Dive.
But I've been back.
Deep Dive number 39.
Wow, 39 already.
Time flies when you're having fun talking aviation, I guess. And we've got some interesting stuff to dive into today, looking at, some recent reports, kind of a collection of different news about some fleet changes, some airport development, just kind of seeing the landscape shift a little bit in the industry.
Yeah, it's a really dynamic time right now in aviation, and these reports really showcase that.
Yeah, so we're going to be looking specifically today at Korean Air, Air Europa, Edelweiss Air, and then we'll jump over to London Gatwick Airport.
All right, sounds good. Good mix of airlines and infrastructure.
Yeah, so let's jump right in and start with Korean Air. They're making some changes to how they're thinking about some of their larger aircraft, and it's really interesting to see how the industry is kind of having to adapt. So what's the main takeaway here with Korean Air?
So the big news is they're holding on to their A380s and their 747-8s for a little bit longer than they initially planned.
So those big, the Queen of the Skies, the double-decker A380, those are sticking around.
They are, at least for now. And it seems like the main reason is because of these delays in getting new aircraft.
That's right. There have been, a lot of issues, especially with the manufacturers just being able to deliver on time.
Exactly. We're talking like around 20 aircraft each from Airbus and Boeing that are delayed.
Wow, that is a huge number of planes.
Yeah, it definitely has ripple effects, and it makes you realize how much those delivery timelines factor into airlines' long-term strategies,
Yeah.
especially when you're talking about the larger aircraft.
Absolutely. And it's not just about getting the planes themselves, right? It's also about crew training, route planning. All of that has to be adjusted when these delays happen.
Oh, for sure. It's a massive logistical puzzle. And for passengers like us, it can mean maybe a few more years of flying on these older but iconic aircraft.
I mean, some people love the A380, so maybe that's not a bad thing, at least in the short term. But, to be fair, they were originally planning to retire those, weren't they?
Yeah, their initial plan was to start phasing them out around 2026. And for the 747-8s, it was the early 2030s.
So this is a pretty significant shift in their thinking. And they've been pretty clear that these aircraft will only be retired once they get those replacements, right?
Yeah, the CEO of Korean Air specifically said that. It's definitely a wait-and-see approach.
And they're not just holding on to these larger aircraft, they're also making changes to their, slightly smaller wide-body fleet.
Yeah, they're going to be retiring their older Boeing 777s as well.
Right. So it's like a balancing act, holding on to some older planes while also trying to modernize the fleet as much as possible.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit of a juggling act for them.
So how many of those super jumbos, those A380s and 747-8s, does Korean Air actually have in their fleet right now?
Well, I've got 7 A380s and 6 of the 747-8s.
And of course, we have to remember their recent merger or acquisition, I guess, of Asiana.
Oh, right. That's a huge factor. With Aviation, they get access to another 6 A380s.
So that's a considerable number of those really large aircraft. I'm curious, what kind of shape are they in? What's the average age of those planes?
So for Korean Air's A380s, the average age is about 11.3 years. And their 747-8s, a bit younger, about 8.7 years. Asiana's A380s average around 10 years.
So they're not exactly brand new, but, with good maintenance, these planes can fly for quite a while longer.
Oh, for sure. And as we've seen, they're really valuable to the airline, especially with those delays in new aircraft deliveries.
Absolutely. They're really helping to bridge that gap. So to give everyone a sense of how big this delay is, what are the new aircraft that they're waiting for? It's quite a list, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a pretty impressive order book. Korean Air has 41 A321-200NXs on order.
Those are the new, more fuel-efficient versions, right?
Exactly. Those are the ones with the new engine option. Plus, they've got 4 A350-900s, 27 of the larger A350-1000s, 19 Boeing 737-8s.
Wow, and I thought the A321 order was big. That's a lot of planes coming in.
It is, and there's more. 14 Boeing 737-10s and 6 Boeing 787-9s.
So they've got a pretty diverse mix of narrow bodies and wide bodies on order.
Absolutely. And Asiana is also getting in on the action. They have 12 A321-200NXs and 15 A350-900s coming their way.
So once all these new planes start arriving, it's going to be a completely different landscape for them, both Korean Air and Asiana.
It really will. It's going to be fascinating to see how they integrate all these new aircraft into their fleet and how it impacts their route network.
Yeah, a lot to look forward to there. But for now, we're going to shift gears and head over to London Gatwick Airport, which has some pretty significant expansion plans in the works.
Yeah, Gatwick is a really interesting case study. They're operating with just a single runway, but they're handling a huge number of passengers.
It's incredible how much traffic they manage. And now they're investing £140 million to extend Pier 6, which is going to add 8 brand new gates.
That's a substantial investment. 8 new gates is going to make a big difference to their capacity.
It definitely will. They're expecting it to open in 2027, and it'll allow them to handle an additional 7.5 million passengers per year.
That's a huge increase. And it's not just about the raw numbers, it's also about the passenger experience.
Exactly. And one of the key goals here is to reduce those bus transfers between the terminal and the aircraft.
Right, because no one really enjoys those, do they?
Nope. Those bus rides can be a real hassle, especially when you're trying to make a connection.
They're estimating that over 500,000 passengers won't need to take a bus anymore.
That's going to save something like 12,000 bus journeys each year.
And think about the environmental benefits, too. Fewer buses running around the airport.
It's a win-win situation for passengers and for the environment. But I have to wonder, Gatwick is already a very busy airport. How are they going to manage this construction project while still operating?
You're right, it's a major logistical challenge. I mean, they handled almost 41 million passengers in 2023.
And that's a 25% increase from 2022.
Eh.
It's incredible how much traffic they have.
Yeah, it's a testament to their efficiency. And remember, they also have that long-term plan to possibly turn their northern taxiway into a second runway.
Right, that's a much larger project, and it's still in the planning stages. But if it goes ahead, it would completely transform Gatwick's capacity.
It would be a game changer for them. But for now, they're focusing on this Pier 6 extension, and they're really committed to making it as sustainable as possible.
That's great to hear. What are some of the steps they're taking to minimize their environmental impact?
So they've made some significant changes to the design. They've reduced the building's width, and they've moved a service road, which means they can build a 2-story structure instead of a 3-story one.
Ah, so that's going to save on materials and energy.
Exactly, and they're projecting about a 40% saving in embodied carbon just from those changes.
That's pretty impressive. And for those who may not be familiar, what exactly is embodied carbon?
It's essentially a measure of all the greenhouse gas emissions associated with the materials and the processes of construction. So from the manufacturing of the steel and the concrete to the transportation to the actual construction process itself, it all adds up.
So reducing that is really important, especially for large-scale projects like this.
Absolutely. And they're not stopping there. They're also changing the interior finishes, which is going to save another 20% in carbon emissions.
It's really encouraging to see them taking this seriously. And the company that's doing the construction, Mace, they're the ones who built the original Pier 6 back in 2005.
Oh, wow. So they already have experience working at Gatwick. That's a big advantage.
It definitely is. It should make the whole process smoother. All right, now let's jump over to Air Europa. They got some news about a new aircraft type they're bringing into their fleet.
Yeah, they're finally getting ready to start operations with the Boeing 737-8, sometimes called the Amex 8.
So when can we expect to see these planes flying for Air Europa?
They're planning to start on June 23, 2025.
And what about the first route? Where will these MAX 8s make their debut?
The inaugural flight will be between Madrid Barajas and Amsterdam Schiphol.
Interesting choice. And I remember reading that this was actually moved forward from the initial timeline, wasn't it?
You're right, it was originally planned for September 2025.
So they've accelerated the introduction. That suggests maybe things are moving along a little more smoothly on the production side.
Maybe. Or it could also be that Air Europa sees a need for this type of aircraft sooner than they initially anticipated.
That makes sense. And it sounds like they're not wasting any time rolling these out to other destinations.
Right. Just a day later, on June 24th, they'll start flying the MAX 8 between Madrid and Brussels National.
And then it's off to Paris and London.
Exactly. Madrid to Paris-Orly is scheduled to begin on October 1st, 2025, and then Madrid to London Gatwick will start on January 10th, 2026.
So if you're flying to or from Madrid on Air Europa in the near future,
Mm-hmm.
you might just find yourself on one of these brand new MAX 8s.
It's a good possibility. They've got a total of 30 of these aircraft on order.
Wow, that's a significant commitment to this aircraft type. And are they buying all of them directly from Boeing?
They're buying 20 directly from Boeing, and then they're leasing an additional 10 from AerCap.
It's a smart strategy to have a mix of owned and leased aircraft.
Yeah.
Gives them some flexibility. And just to remind everyone, what does their current fleet look like?
Right now, they've got 18 Boeing 737-800s, 10 Boeing 787-8s, and 15 Boeing 787-9s.
So these MAX 8s are really going to change the makeup of their narrow-body fleet.
They are. It's a major modernization effort for them.
Okay, and finally, we're going to talk about Edelweiss Air, who's also making some changes to their fleet.
Yep, they just welcomed their very first Airbus A350-900.
I love those planes.
Yeah,
So sleek and modern. And this is just the first of 6 A350s they're adding, right?
that's right. This is part of a bigger plan to refresh their fleet with these new aircraft.
And do we know when this first A350 touched down in Zurich?
It arrived on March 13th after a ferry flight from Lord Starbs.
And it's interesting because this isn't a brand new plane straight from Airbus.
Nope, this one has a bit of history. It's about 5.3 years old.
Oh, so it's a pre-owned aircraft. Where did it fly before?
It actually flew for LATAM Airlines Brazil for a couple of years between December 2019 and June 2021.
So why did LATAM let it go?
Well, LATAM Airlines Group made the decision to retire this particular aircraft type from their fleet.
Interesting. So Edelweiss saw an opportunity to acquire a relatively young A350.
Exactly, and Lufthansa Group, which owns Swiss International Airlines and Edelweiss, they picked it up from Ducalion Aviation.
So it's got a new life now with Edelweiss. What was the configuration like when it was flying for LATAM?
It had 339 seats in total, 30 business class, 63 in economy plus, and 246 in standard economy.
It'll be interesting to see if Edelweiss decides to make any changes to that layout.
Yeah, they might want to adjust it to better suit their own needs and passenger demographics.
So when can we expect to see this A350 flying passengers for Edelweiss?
Well, they're planning to start commercial service on April 1st, 2025.
Just a few weeks away. And what are the first routes going to be?
Initially, they'll be using it for shorter flights in Europe and Turkey, mainly for crew training.
So getting everyone familiar with the aircraft before sending it off on those long-haul journeys.
Exactly. And then a big debut on long-haul routes is planned for May 15th, 2025 on the Las Vegas route.
Vegas, baby.
Yep, if you're flying Edelweiss to Vegas next summer, you might just get lucky and be on this A350.
That would be pretty cool. And ultimately, these A350s are going to be replacing Edelweiss's older A340-300s, right?
That's the plan. They want to have all 5 of their A340s replaced by mid-2027.
So it's a gradual transition to a more modern and fuel-efficient long-haul fleet.
It is. And don't forget, they also have 14 Airbus A320-200s for their shorter routes.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, from fleet adjustments and delays to airport expansions and new aircraft introductions.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting deep dive into the current state of the aviation industry.
And it just goes to show how dynamic this industry is and how airlines and airports are constantly having to adapt to all sorts of challenges and opportunities.
It's fascinating to see how all these decisions, whether it's Korean Air holding onto their A380s or Gatwick building new gates, they all have ripple effects throughout the entire industry.
Absolutely. So as you go about your day, think about what stood out to you in this deep dive. Maybe it's the sheer scale of aircraft orders or the complexity of expanding a major airport. Maybe it's those delivery delays and how they're impacting airlines around the world.
Or maybe it's just the excitement of seeing new aircraft like the A350 and the MAX 8 entering service with more and more airlines.
Whatever it is, we hope this discussion has given you a little bit more insight into the ever-evolving world of aviation.
And we'd love to hear your thoughts on these topics. What are you most interested in learning more about?
So share your comments and questions, and let's keep this conversation going. And until next time, happy travels, everyone.
Safe travels.